Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons in context to the film You People, a brilliant film brought forward by Eddie Murphy and Jonah Hill, right? And it's a brilliant, brilliant film that talks about the delta between marginalized groups and what allows you to qualify as a marginalized group when you unquestionably have power, right? A brilliant, brilliant film, and actually, it is absolutely apropos to discussing it in the context of the Dungeons and Dragons community, and that's what I want to do today. First of all, spoilers for You People, Jonah Hill and Eddie Murphy's brilliant, brilliant film about marginalization. All right, and navigating marginalization in modern day America. All right, so let's jump into this. So first of all, fantastic film. I really enjoy this. Actually, I'm 2/3 of the way through this film. I'm doing in-flight analysis, right? And the 2/3 I've seen of this film are brilliant, right? And you're like, Scott, why are you talking about a movie you didn't see? This is 2023, right? And I pay attention, and I will tell you right now, there is no shelf, right? If you don't talk about something, the moment you encounter it, it goes stale. It goes stale like tomorrow. And you're like, Scott, I don't know if that's true. I'm going to point you to Professor Dungeon Master. That man literally has videos of him talking to himself about himself and commenting on his own commentary, right? And you're like, that's really circular and weird. And it is. And he has ridiculous videos where he's literally talking to himself about himself, right? Because he hasn't learned there's no shelf. Like, you talk about stuff when you encounter it, or the world moves on and there's no space to even talk about it, right? So in my humble opinion, the future of D&D commentary is hyper fast discussion, right? And and that's another thing, is I'm incredibly blessed. I have a platform where I can talk every day, multiple times a day, about Dungeons and Dragons, and it is very hard to build a channel about any topic nowadays, but frequency and sequencing are important. And so that's why I'm talking to you about a movie I've only watched 2/3 of, right? And I think this is the future of commentaries. You talk about everything the minute you encounter it, so that's fresh, right? Like when you go to the grocery stores, you squeeze the fruit and you want the fresh stuff. That's what I'm trying to bring to you. All right. Let's talk about this brilliant film, and I really think it's something really special and really unique. All right, so let's get all the way there on it. Okay. All right. Yeah, let's dig in on this. All right. So where are we at with this? Right. You People. Okay. You People is a movie about African American culture and Jewish American culture, and it is the story of a young Jewish man, a Jonah Hill's character, Ezra, and his fiance, okay, who is a young black woman, and both of them live in the Hollywood area, and both of them are successful. Ezra works in finance, she works in movies, right? And they take Ezra's hyper-Jewish American family, and he falls in love with his black fiance, and then at that point, the story starts to go forward, and the two families come together because they have to be together, because Ezra actually proposes to his black girlfriend, who becomes his black fiance, and gives her his grandmother's Holocaust ring, right? And the whole thing starts to move forward, and this hyper Jewish American family gets slammed right up against this hyper African American family, and their cultures clash, right? And they clash immediately because they both feel that they are marginalized groups, and they are both used to getting treatment from the benefit of being a marginalized group, and from the advantage of being a marginalized group, and from the disadvantage of being a marginalized group. And this is an incredibly valuable film because it is saying we are no longer where we used to be, right? African American African Americans and Jewish Americans now have massive amounts of power, right? Tyler Perry is real. Barack Obama is real. It is quite real that the Jewish people have significant influence within Hollywood, right? Within entertainment, within finance, right? And so Jonah Hill and Eddie Murphy are prompting this conversation about we're past the part where white people are always the oppressor, and the Jewish people are always the oppressed, and the black people are always the oppressed, right? We had a black president. Things are changing, right? Jewish people have overcome massive obstacles, right? And so this movie is looking at two families that have done extremely well in the American structure, right? To the point where they both have power, right? Like Charlie, Eddie Murphy's character, is a black Muslim, and as a black Muslim, they show very clearly that Ezra's black fiance's mother and father are quite well-to-do, right? And everything they have is on-point, top-tier luxury, right? And that within the American structure, they have found massive acceptance and been able to make their way to success, full success, right? To the point where you're like, man, that's a Maserati you're driving, as a black Muslim. Are you really still marginalized? A lot of people in America don't have Maseratis, and Ezra's family is in the same boat, right? Yes, 3 generations ago, your people went through the Holocaust. Right now, you have massive control over large portions of the entertainment field, and you have significant control in finance, right? As a people, right? And so this is a very nuanced discussion, right? So where does this hit Dungeons & Dragons? Well, we are very much in the same place, right? So Dungeons & Dragons is a community, right? D&D, the D&D community is a thing, right? Are we marginalized? Well, it's non-debatable from the 1983 Satanic Panic, and it's non-debatable from the 2023 Manic Panic. There are 2 extinction-level events that the owners of Dungeons & Dragons have had to sidestep, right? And the D&D community were caught in the gears, right? In 1983, Dungeons & Dragons dungeon masters and players were brought to the literal bonfire and said, throw your books in, and they did, right? In 2023, literally thousands of dungeon masters and D&D players were brought to the digital bonfire and said, delete that D&D Beyond account. We're all here. We're all watching. Do it. Digitally burn your digital books. These are 2 events. This is non-debatable, right? There's been 2 extinction level events. So there's no question. D&D community has people who are marginalized, but it gets way more complicated than that, right? Because here's the kicker. We got people who were brought by evangelicals to the literal bonfire and said, throw your books into the fire and let them burn, right? Who literally then came and joined the D&D Begone betrayers, the D&D betrayers, who shouted D&D Begone, and then said to now dungeon masters and players, throw your digital books on the digital bonfire, right? Delete your account. I know you spent $700 and you have 35 D&D canon hardbacks. I don't care. Burn them, right? I want your digital books digitally burned, right? So we literally have the persecuted now are the persecutors, right? And it's not a debatable fact. There were thousands of it. Like it happened thousands of times, right? Now I will say this: there's a passionate, incredibly dedicated group to revisioning the whole thing and painting it like there wasn't persecution, right? I watched a movie about people who said that the Holocaust didn't happen, right? And how hard the Jewish people had to fight to say, oh no, the Holocaust did happen, right? And we are in the same situation with Dungeons and Dragons. And there were people who did revisionisms there. It was like, oh, there really weren't that many, literal bonfires. There were bonfires. They literally burned books. In 2023, there was a digital bonfire. They digitally burned books, right? And people are like, well, and then you're like, these are the facts, right? This is what happened, right? Like, and with thousands and thousands and thousands of tweets saying D&D be gone, there's still people pretending it wasn't a pun, and it was a pun and not an extinction level event. A second group coming and doing the same thing that happened in 1983. 1983, 2023, 1983. I have a moral standard against TSR. You cannot. Buy, own, read, run, watch Dungeons & Dragons. 2023, I have a moral standard against Hasbro. You cannot buy, own, read, run, watch Dungeons & Dragons. It's there, right? So in Dungeons & Dragons, we're in the exact same place. The D&D community, in my humble opinion, is in the exact same place as the African American community and the Jewish community. These communities where you're like, yes, you absolutely have points of persecution, right? But you also have points of power, right? And we're in the same, right? Like, generally, right, there's no question. Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Masters and Dungeons & Dragons players have been persecuted. They also have massive power. In order to read 5th edition canon alone, D&D canon alone, you need to read like 8,000 pages of text. If you have the ability to read 8,000 pages of canon, you are not struggling in America. You will get swept up and paid quite a bit, which is exactly what's happening. We have persecution and we have power. We are an incredibly complex group. And Jonah Hill and Eddie Murphy's movie, You People, embraces this and said, let's have an open and real conversation about where we really are today, right? And I think African American people today and Jewish people today have persecution and power. It's a fact. If you look at those groups, like Barack Obama was real, like the fact that the entertainment groups and the finance group very much have had that the Jewish people have had significant successes there and retain power in those industries is fairly non-debatable. But both of these groups have been under persecution and are under persecution. And so now we reach the point where all three of these groups, African Americans have to acknowledge, in my humble opinion, we have persecution and we have power. How do we navigate that in modern American society? Jewish Americans have to acknowledge we have persecution and we have power, right? Dungeons & Dragons community, we have persecution and we have power. Every word of that is my humble opinion. And more than that, I'm willing to learn if any of that is incorrect. Let's have a discourse. If you have any points that I got wrong, you think I got wrong, point them out in the comments below. I would love to see what your take on this is. All that's my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments, send your traffic. Please consider subscribing and have a wonderful millennium.